Made a bunch of changes to the Patreon as well, so now we're focusing on pretty much all live events and then multiple paint-alongs and stuff like that. So the Patreon definitely has had some big changes. All of that really kicking in next month. This weekend is another live paint-along session. I decided to go with this gold because it's a little bit more neutral of a gold color. It's not that really, really warm gold. So that way it can look a little bit older, dingier whenever we actually start weathering it and everything. And it goes on super smooth, sort of like an airbrush, which really is the focus here because I'm going to be applying like purples for the shadows and then obviously browns and things like that to make it a little bit more musty and dusty in the gold department. So that's the idea, at least. I'm going with the smaller brush right now too, just so that I can make sure it gets into all the cracks. And we are working with a brand new brush right now, so the tip should be perfect for getting it all in there. But I do love the way that this paint covers. I mean, it's just so good. Really satisfying once you start putting it on. So very reflective when you first apply it. And it stays that way as well until you actually do anything to it. It just stays super, super shiny. Probably, like, honestly, it reminds me of using enamel metallic paint because it's so reflective. No other paint brand that I have out of metallics, and I have like probably 5 or 6 different metallic brands, really come close to the level of reflection. Some are close, but only whenever it's applied with an airbrush, so. So you must have missed when I was explaining why. I want to make sure that I'm getting into all the line work here. If I'm using a bigger brush, like this brush is the exact width of a lot of the lines that are sculpted in here, so as long as I can just move my brush in, it's no big deal. The other thing too, if you watch any of my other streams, someone usually asks, so I can paint much faster as long as I'm using the same size brush at all times. Now obviously, like this back part, I'll probably use a bigger brush, but specifically for these lines that are sculpted into there, that's one of the reasons. So, but for the most part, I literally paint with just one brush size at all times, and it helps me stay a lot faster, helps with your brush control, things like that. But one thing about this paint as well is that it's super runny. Or not runny, but it's the viscosity is really low. So, you know, doesn't necessarily matter that I'm using a smaller brush because I'm not going to have to go back over it for multiple coats, things like that. And if I was using a larger brush, I would still be having to go back in to all the cracks. So either way, it's not going to make much of a difference for us here. Yeah, this guy's display level. This dude's display, and then everybody else in the commission's heroic level. There's so many little details sculpted on these metal plates. Now, this came to me pre-assembled and pre-primed, so, you know, if it wasn't already put together, I probably could have airbrushed all the metallics on, and that obviously would be faster. But since it's already put together, I don't really want to, like, try and pull apart glue, you know what I mean? I feel like that would lead to some disaster. So that's just one thing that I'm trying to avoid here. But for the most part, it shouldn't be too much of a hindrance, as long as I'm able to just get into all the cracks, get that base layer in, because pretty much we're not applying anything else to this gold, pigment-wise, other than a bunch of washes and things like that. So as long as my base coat is perfect, I don't have any of that white primer that was used underneath showing, I should be okay. So let's just do the other side. Because everything else should be easy. The headdress will be easy. This is kind of the only precarious part. I mean, not really, Ben. The airbrush for larger display level stuff like this doesn't make it go faster. It just allows me to do better techniques. Like, it allows me to do the same techniques that I would normally do, but just a easier transition. In the time that I save doing, like, a base color with an airbrush, I mean, you know, I did the base highlighting and shadows with the airbrush, but then I spent 2 hours working on the skin base shadows. So, like, you know, I don't know if that saved me any time, because I still spent 2 hours doing glazing shadows on it. So, you know, I don't know. For like heroic level stuff, yeah, it's way faster because I'm not going back in and doing a bunch of glazing and stuff like that. But for display stuff, you know, the airbrush is just more of another tool to allow me to do techniques before I start applying techniques, before I start doing other techniques, if that makes sense. It's just another step in the process at that point. Because otherwise, I would just do wet blending with a brush, which doesn't really take a long time. Wet blending is something, at least the way that I do it, is something that happens immediately, and you have to kind of do it quickly to make sure you're using the same colors in the palette, you're able to blend them fast enough, things like that. Because I don't like using extending medium, I just like doing water, the quick wash medium, stuff like that, and that doesn't extend drying time at all, so no real way to tell. Unless I were to paint the same miniature side by side, display level with an airbrush and without. Which obviously, that's kind of crazy. Mac, any other miniature painters you watch? Nope. Do you have anything in the background playing when you paint? Just music when I stream. When I paint, sometimes I'll have like a podcast going, an audiobook going, or like I'll literally binge watch an entire show, because I have multiple monitors. set up around my station. I have one on the wall that I look at when I'm talking to the chat right here. It's just right off to the left. So if I do, if I have something I want to watch, I'll just put it up on there. But I obviously can't really watch it. So, for the most part, it's podcasts, audiobooks, stuff like that. But yeah, I mean, painting all day doesn't really lend me time to watch much of anything until I'm finished, so... But yeah, again, like I was saying, the consistency of this paint is so great. The coverage that you get from it, remember, this is the Warcolor 1-coat paint, so it's supposed to give you really good coverage all the time. No, I make my own basing texture, so I've never used the Vallejo stuff. It's much cheaper to do it on your own. The only other brand I've purchased of anything that's like pre-made for basing was Games Workshop's, just so I could like compare the consistency, and then I just copied theirs. So that's really the only thing that I've done. Because yeah, for the same price you get like 5 times the amount if you make it yourself. I mean, even more depending on if you buy it online. I just buy this stuff locally. But if you buy the materials online, you can obviously get a discount. No, definitely not PVA sand. If you're interested, one of my Patreon classes that we've done for members is all about basing. And I tell you the exact mixture and everything that I do to make it. But no sand, no PVA. A little bit trickier than that. But obviously, I mean, sand and glue, that's like what everybody suggests that you use when you're starting out, you know, to get that classic miniature texture on your bases. Some of this metallic paint has also flecked off. You can't really see it on camera, but it's like tiny little flecks have gone off the edges. So I'll have to go back over those with some of the strong tone wash, and then it will cover it up completely like it never happened. But you can see how reflective this gold is. I mean, it's crazy super shiny. It goes on super thin, like there was, I mean, it essentially looks like it's been airbrushed the way that it applies, which is awesome. Because normally getting that effect is very, very difficult with the brush. So if you can wait the 10 to 15 business days it takes to actually get this stuff from Cyprus, if you're in the US, I'd highly recommend it. I haven't tried any of the other paints. I know some of them aren't as quote-unquote one coat as the others are, but the metallics are really awesome. That's what we've used the most here on the channel so far. And they dry pretty fast, too, which is great. So whatever chemicals we got going on here, they're working pretty well. Anytime I work on this dude on stream, it's always so weird just because he's so big. Makes it so much more difficult to try and figure out, like, because I have the camera arm all positioned funny and then the focal point's all out of whack, so it's kind of a challenge, but for the most part it hadn't been too bad. This guy's huge. So if it's your first time watching or anything like that, feel free to like the page. Today is the last day to enter into a $225 credit giveaway. So you have to like the page, and then there's a pinned post at the top that you'll enter into. So make sure you read the little instructions there. I mean, it's nothing crazy. Just like the page, comment, and like that, and you're good to go. Because that's how the like third-party drawing app that I use works. So I'm not just randomly browsing and picking somebody. It's actually done through a third party. So make sure you follow those instructions, and that way the application knows how to pull the data. Other than that, today is also the last day for the sale that I'm running currently. So you can get 10% off 100, 20% off 400 or more, 30% off 1,000. I know I've had about 3 people take advantage of that so far in the last week. So definitely check that out if you are in the neighborhood for getting anything commission painted. Let's see, we'll do the other side, since we've just been kind of flipping it back and forth. And if it's your first time seeing my stuff as well, feel free to drop in the chat where you're watching from. Always appreciate knowing that information. I always think it's really cool. If you have any questions, feel free to ask them in the chat as well. If you comment on wherever I shared this stuff, I unfortunately won't be able to see those unless I like click away and go check it out in my own time. So definitely the chat window is the best place to do it, and I'll try and get you an answer for whatever you may be wondering. The only other change going on right now too is definitely changed the Patreon schedule as well. So there are a bunch of live events that are done for patrons. We do paint-alongs with the same miniatures every month. There's one-on-one lessons, there's tutorials, live tutorials, stuff like that. So a lot different than what we were offering before. So if that's anything that interests you, you can check it out at patreon.com/minipaintingstudio. The URL is in the bottom right-hand side of the frame. And if none of that is at all interesting to you, no big deal. I always appreciate people hanging out, so thanks for stopping by with us today. Always amazed every day at how many people watch, comment. The fact that I can do it full time, totally badass, so big thank you to everybody. I really just want to be done with this coating already so that I can start applying the washes. I really want to see how this gold interacts, because I've only used this gold a few times, but never in a display setting, so I've never applied like colored glazes and stuff like that to it. I know it'll be fine, but I just kind of want to know because it's more of a dull gold tone. You can't see what I'm painting right now, but I'm doing the under leg. There you go, you can sort of see. It's just a really hard angle to do. With a Forge World model of this size, it's just like, geez, dude. What can you really do? Brian, so we are using Warcolor One Coat Gold. It's like magic in a bottle. Weirdly enough, I've always had issues with Army Painter Gold. Now, I use primarily all Army Painter paints with Vallejo and Warcolors for higher quality stuff. And I love Army Painter Metallics. I think they're some of the best out there, with Vallejo second up. But that being said, like, I use for all commissions pretty much, I use the Army Painter Plate Mail metal color, and then their brass for gold, and then highlight it up. Or no, not their brass, their weapon bronze or whatever. But for whatever reason, their gold color, I can never get good results. I'm just always like, I don't know, it's too thin, or you have to do multiple coats, I don't know. But this stuff from, and I'm actually holding this model up like underneath my head so I can get underneath this angle. But the stuff from Warcolors, totally awesome. Definitely recommend it. I mean, if you're in the UK, for sure check it out, because it comes from Cyprus, so you don't have to wait forever for shipping. I mean, maybe you do still, I don't really know how all that works, but over here it's like 10 to 15 business days, so about a month, depending on what time of year, etc. But it is flat rate shipping, so it's actually pretty great, because it's like the same amount I would pay from buying something directly from Army Painter or like Miniature Market or any of those online shops, so. Right now doing the underside of the plating, and then we can work on the headdress. All we have left is some stuff on the tail. Whoop, bumping the camera, sorry. Yeah, the price is also crazy cheap, so I think that's one of the reasons why it's good. Well, Cyprus, the country, obviously is like a tax shelter haven, but I know that the cost of living over there must be pretty cheap, because his paints cost like nothing. I also know that it's a very, very small operation. It was a one-man operation. It may still be a one-man operation. But you're able to get really great prices, really good product. Cheaper than I think every other brand, especially when you buy sets. It's so cheap. Okay. Let me hit the things on this back leg right here. Whoever sculpted this was a sadist, but it's alright. It is Forge World after all. They're not known for being the easiest models. Arthur, what are you doing? Arthur. You are such a weirdo. Sorry, my cat's currently going through a demonic possession or something. He's just staring at me with his mouth open. I don't know what that's about. What are you doing, man? Oh, don't do that. Alright, so almost done with this, and then he has two little segments on his tail, and then the headdress. We'll be good to go. And like I said too, I'm using a small brush, so I mean, this is all really detailed, and there's a lot of ridges, so instead of watering the paint down, I'm just using a smaller brush to get into all the cracks. Now obviously, no one's gonna pick this model up after it's on the base and look underneath what I'm painting right now. But since I'm not like some kind of sociopath that rips off their clients, I'm gonna make sure I'm not gonna take too many shortcuts here. Now obviously when I'm glazing this, I'm not gonna go crazy and do a bunch of detail work in areas where you won't see. But I'm at least gonna make sure everything's base coated and looks good in that regard. And then I think I need to do this part right here, right on top. Bump this back, there we go. So along with this commission, there's 96 skinks and 3 of the pterodon riders. I think that's what they're called, the little pterodactyl dudes, and then 3 heroes as well. So those might hit the stream, those might not. I don't know. I mean, we're gonna have a lot of lizards to look at, so it just kind of depends on what we end up spending more time on. If you've been working on anything, feel free to let me know in the chat as well. If you've got any projects you're doing. Anything cool you're excited to paint. I know we've got a lot of cool commissions coming up. Beyond this one as well, we have a big Rising Sun Kickstarter commission that I just booked that'll be heroic level. We've got some more Gloomhaven. We've got Kingdom Death Monster. That's all going to be display level, which is going to be really badass to paint. What else? We have some Blood Rage. We got all kinds of stuff. I'm excited about the Blood Rage. I mean, I've painted Blood Rage before, but this one has one of like the Kickstarter bosses. So that'll be cool. I think it's Fenrir, the big wolf. Of course, yesterday we were working on some personal stuff for me. Just took a little break. Alright, oh yeah, and then we have these little spikes right here. Let me back this boy up. Let me change this up here. There we go. So Mac asked, let me see, do you prefer doing war games or board games? I prefer doing miniatures that were meant to be painted, which is kind of a tricky statement nowadays because you have companies like Cool Mini or Not making board games and they're like, yeah, look at these badass miniatures, but I mean, even though they have detail, they're still not the best. Like, whenever you see the stuff that they've painted, what they're showing off are the resin models that they had painted. They're not the actual soft plastic that they then ship out to people. But, you know, if a game has really well-sculpted stuff, it doesn't really matter if it's a board game or not, but based on those principles, 99% of the time, it's going to have to be a war game to be a model that's really, really sculpted with that in mind. Kingdom Death Monster is a little bit different because those are like traditional hard plastic miniatures, so they're really nice. But otherwise, you know, like when I do all my Scythe commissions, I paint Scythe all the time. I've probably done 20 copies in the last year. You know, those aren't very good miniatures in terms of detail. Especially the original Kickstarter version of the heroes, like they have no detail on them at all. So it's actually, it's more difficult for me to paint because I'm working with like really smooth surfaces that are supposed to be fur and stuff like that. So those aren't very fun. Don't really enjoy them, but it's great work and they look great when they're finished, but it's just, you know, sort of mentally like exhausting to be like, well, I have to try and make this look good. As opposed to like wargame miniatures where some stuff looks phenomenal with just a base coat and a wash. So, alright, we're gonna get this bottom side and then we're done with this. Then we can move on to the headdress. There we go. Alright. Move the camera. I feel like that's gonna be the theme of the day today, is moving that camera everywhere. Let me see if I can move this. Give us better lighting. There we go. Alright. Yeah, Sarah, luckily my cat doesn't mess with any of my painting stuff, so he knows better.
I can't seem to keep the sound of your footsteps coming.
Yeah, I probably would have preferred this not been put together when it was shipped, or at least the armor not on, just so I could have an easier time getting into some of these detail areas, but it's not a big deal. Saves me time in the front. Probably saves time in the back too, I don't know. Either way. He's like literally mounted on my paint stand. I'm glad I didn't base this guy though. I knew I would need to paint him without putting him on a base because that would have been a terrible mistake. Oh my god. Something this size? No way should you base it first. I mean, maybe if it was tabletop quality and it wasn't, like, if I had the ability to prime this dude black first, that'd be nice, but it came to me primed, so I'm not gonna mess with that. But if it was tabletop quality and I didn't really care about trying to transition shadows and things like that, I would probably throw it on a base and then just apply like dark brown glazes in the shadows and just not care. But since that's not the case, you know, we're gonna make sure we give it enough love and everything like that. But man, is this a big old dinosaur. So again, this Saturday is going to be another live paint-along session. Definitely check out the Patreon if you're interested in anything like that. We're going to start doing 2 different sessions a month. If we get some more people on the Patreon, I'll bump it up to 3. In the paint-alongs, we all purchase usually one of the WizKids pre-primed miniatures, since they're so cheap, and then we paint them towards the end of the month. And we do it all together live. And it's always a good time. Looks like I'm gonna be pinning a spike back on its leg. That's always really cool. Good old Forge World quality. Haven't had anything break on it yet, so one spike that I can pin and re-glue. Not too upset about that. Not really. I mean, it's fine. Like, really just doing the detail stuff like this takes a long time. Like I was saying earlier, it's because this is already glued together. That's the only reason why this is taking longer. Because if the armor hadn't been applied, I would just airbrush it all. It's also because I'm trying to stream. Otherwise, I'd be holding it in one hand and then have it in the other, you know. I'm just trying to get it at some sort of angle that you guys can even see, which is easier said than done. I mean, I could back it out all the way, but then you don't see as much detail, so, you know, it's always a give and take situation. So we're gonna rotate him here again. Sort of. Maybe. How can I hold it like this? Sure, why not? Alright. So Brian asks how frequently. I stream usually every single day, Monday through Friday. And the length just kind of depends on whatever we're working on, but it's usually never over an hour and a half to 2 hours. Jeez. This guy is proving difficult to film. This may be the last time I actually work on him, except for when I'm doing, like, detail on the face only. Because, yeah, trying to get this on camera is actually kind of stupid. But we'll persevere. We'll make it happen. Again, if you're just now joining, make sure that you have entered into the $225 credit giveaway. Check out the page in the pin post on how to enter, and you'll be eligible for that. Today is also the last day for the discounts that I'm running, so 10% off at least 100, 20 off 400, 30 off 1,000. That's $300 at least if you have a big commission that you need to knock out. So that's a pretty good deal. I've never done 30% off anything. Turnaround time right now, you're looking at March for stuff. Just so you know. I'm all the way booked in February. No rush order available. Alright, let's turn this dude. Like so. Pull this back like so. Rotate it like so. Luckily, the way that I have this camera mounted, I can do it any direction I need to, but not the easiest out there. I did a little bit of pre-shading with the airbrush on the inside there just to tinge it out. But with this one coat paint, it really doesn't make much of a difference. Did I say really don't make much of a difference? It really doesn't make. Jeez. Jeez. Excuse me. I know I live around a bunch of rednecks, but I promise I'm not one. Alright, let's throw more out here. Actually, let me clean my brush for just a second. Since we haven't done that in about an hour, right? Yeah, 52 minutes. Give me one moment here as well. There's been some beeps and some bobbles here on my my phone. Oh, wow. Here comes the meows, man. Arthur thinks it's time to EAT. Okay. Let's see. Whoa, hey. No, sir. Sorry, guys. Looks like the cat did find some stuff that I was working on. There we go. Let's move out of the way. A bunch of bits from the Astra Militarum stuff. Okay. Oh, and just letting you know, so, I don't know. I mean, maybe I'll be nice and explain the difference, but there have been some people that have tried to enter the contest that haven't liked the page, which it clearly says that you need to do, or they don't actually hit the like button, they hit the follow button, which also is not the same. So, you know, if this evening, whenever I do the drawing for the 225 credit and your name pops up and you haven't done that, then I hit the draw button again and pick somebody else. So just make sure that you've done the correct way to enter, and you should be just fine. And I'll post the winner in that thread, and then I'll make another post, most likely. But I think everybody gets notified when I post in that thread, because I did it the other day to kind of troll some people. So as long as everybody can see who wins, it'll be all good. Eating plastic over there. Oh yeah, I got paint on the lamp there. That's pretty cool. I've got paint on the lamp, paint on the camera. I think I have paint on my microphone. We got paint everywhere up in here. Totally unavoidable. Okay, so we got that side. Need to get the front side here. Wham! There we go. Probably not going to do the glazing aspect of this on stream today. I don't know. We'll see. Maybe like one panel. We can test it out. But I'm definitely not going to be chasing this model around with this camera, trying to do glazes. That's something that needs to be done like all at one angle, so you know you're hitting everything right and applying it correctly. While I do try, and so if you're new and you've never seen my stuff before, and I really haven't explained this mostly, I've only explained it to like, I don't know, a few people, but kind of what I pick to do while I'm streaming. I never like to work on something like with this miniature, because it's sort of, I mean, you know, people don't really buy a bunch of Forge World stuff, so it's kind of like a rare thing to see being painted. That's sort of why I wanted to paint it. It also looks cool, whatever. I can show some different techniques on it. But it's obviously turning out to be more of a pain to try and do on camera than, you know, regular miniatures, or even like vehicles and stuff, just because it's so big. But I usually only like to stream something that I can either A, start and finish all at one go, or like 2 days in a row. So like, you know, a lot of the older videos, if you look, it's me painting something start to finish every time. When I don't have anything I can do that with is when you'll see me bust out something that's going to take a couple sessions to finish, or whatever the case may be, right? But normally that's what I try and stream, is something that you guys can see me start at the beginning and go all the way through and finish within an hour and a half, usually, or 2 hours. But so for this, obviously we spent an hour base coating all the metal bits. But what we'll do now is go in on one of these panels and actually do some of the weathering work. And then that'll be it. We'll just call it there. And that'll be like the last stream of this dude that we actually mess with. Get a good angle. And there we go. Alright, so I'm pretty sure that's in focus. Looks good in focus. And we can start planning the wash and weathering. So first thing, oh, why am I talking with this in my mouth? Sorry, excuse me. So first thing we're gonna do is purple. Purple for one, because we've already incorporated purple in the glazing and the skin. And two, purple's actually really good on gold. Three, whenever we hit it with any kind of other brown wash, it'll be great. We're also gonna mix in the quick shade, as usual. Just to thin it down without thinning it down. So the gold that you're looking at right now is pretty dull, right? It's like not a very warm gold tone compared to like what we did with the Shadespire guys or like this gold right here, right? By comparison. So what the goal is to use a purple wash for shades to actually warm it up. And it'll be a little bit richer than applying some kind of like basic brown tone or something like that. And it won't be super immediately obvious that it's purple after we do the shade tones on top. So it's kind of the same method that we used to do the skin and everything else. You apply your colors first and then your tonal wash second, or the tonal glaze second. In that way you're sort of ensuring that you're getting some of that warmth and color underneath. So you can see we're just glazing it on. Interestingly enough, your angle is a little bit more reflective than mine. I wonder if I can change that for you. A little bit, like that, possibly, yeah. Oh, now my angle's trash. There we go, well. That's sort of the name of the game with this guy. And you can see me pretty much feathering in the glaze wherever I want that color to hit whenever we apply the shadow. So it's sort of like some techniques whenever you're doing non-metallic metal, stuff like that. Similar in that regard of your sort of underpainting where you would expect shadows to hit. But most of the work is done here. Then you just apply your tonal wash and you're done. So even though you spend a little bit more time doing this, the end result's definitely worth it. If you watched the last time we worked on this guy on stream, I know one of my friends was watching and he was like, I literally didn't know why you were applying so much pigment until that last step where you applied that darker wash and then it tied it all together. And that's sort of what's happening here. It's going to be a lot more pigmented while we're doing it right now. And then whenever you go back in for that final wash, it ties it all together. And the purple and gold together looks really nice once you're finished. If you've never tried it before. من 1 إلى 4 بعد الزوال مع برنامج علبة أسطوانات ميديا صندوق البريد 2055 طنجة. Oh, my angle is so difficult here with the camera. But at least you're able to see a little bit what's happening in the glazing stage. And then, of course, we'll do edge work after it's all said and done. But we'll just focus on this one panel. Shouldn't take too long for the glazes to actually dry on it. We're not going to focus on the edges or anything like that. That can all be done at the end. Really, we're just working on the inside panel work. And what we'll do is we'll do this step. We'll do the brown wash on top. And then whenever we're finished, right, is when we'll go in and paint anything that'll be a painted color, because I know that that's kind of like part of the theme too on this dude, is you paint some of the panels, or like some of the objects in the panels, certain colors. But to let that dry for a second before we go in with another wash. I'll do a little panel underneath though, right here. So Brian asked, do you use pre-made washes? I make washes and I use pre-made. The Army Painter washes are, in my opinion, the best out there on the market. And then using their quick shade wash mixing medium, you can also make your own washes with the same resin floating material that they use to make theirs. Really useful stuff.
Okay, I really think this is important.
So we're just letting that dry for a second. Sorry, checking a message here. All right. So it looks like it's almost dry. We're almost ready to go on that. Where is my toe? Where are you at? Right here. Oh, this is empty. Okay. Didn't remember killing this. Is it empty? Yeah, it's pretty empty. We can start doing a test section. Which is dry? That one's dry. Alright, so I don't know how obvious it is. Oh yeah, it's pretty obvious on camera. So, let me make sure it's really in focus for you. I believe it is. So that section there at the bottom, where that shadow's coming through really red, everything else is sort of a darker brown. And when this dries, the actual intensity of that pigment lightens up, so it's not that dark. But what's happening there, the red color that you're seeing is actually the purple glaze and wash that we applied to the gold beforehand. That gets turned reddish, like a really deep red purple underneath, and it gives a lot of body and warmth to the metal. After that dries, the only other step that's left on metallic parts like that for gold is to then do edge work. I'm not going to edge everything since we're going for a more realistic look on a display model and not a like illustrative look like you would for tabletop or heroic, at least in terms of just doing nice effects. It's only going to be like the lightest highlight parts, the parts that'll be reflecting, things like that. But that worked exactly how I would have wanted it to, which is great. Not that I was expecting anything different, but sometimes you never know what's going to happen. Sometimes things go completely left and you're just like, oh, okay, well. Since I hadn't done this technique yet on this gold color, I wasn't 100% sure. But the theory is sound, and the theory would tell you that it should work that way. So now you can do your normal application using the side of the brush to push and move around the pigment. Underneath, you're going to get all of the beautiful detail and color tint from the purple. looks also a lot darker right now. I think that's the white balance compensating for the reflection of the gold, though. It's definitely not that dark in front of me. Sometimes the camera works against us. Just how it goes. Alright, so all that is obviously very wet still. As it dries though, like that bottom panel is slowly drying. Right here, I'll point it out, because you can see where it's starting to dry. So right at this top point right here on the top of these two little sculpted sections, you can see that the gold color is now coming back out as that wash in the resin starts drying. Then what's going to happen as this happens too is wherever that purple was applied is going to be underneath. Obviously this is a process that you just gotta wait for it to dry. Normally I would put this guy under the fan, but he's actually too big for the fan like stand where I normally drop stuff after I apply washes, so we just kind of gotta deal with it in that regard. Go ahead and do the outline here. I think the angle that you're getting right now is like 100% reflective, so I'll rotate him here in just 1 second. What's great about this metal, or at least this gold from War Colors, is that it retains that same pigment flake even after a matte resin varnish, or not varnish, but a resin material like these washes dry on top of them usually holds its body, but as you can tell it's still totally wet. So but anyway, today we've been going for about an hour and 15. That's totally fine. I'll probably just end it here at least, just because painting this dude on camera is an absolute nightmare. I would probably be 50% further along if I wasn't trying to deal with this camera situation, because I also have to bring the light bar down. Like normally the light bar is up behind my head and it's enough like this, but for the camera I need it to be a little bit closer, and then I also have 3 other lights set up this way so that I don't get shadows 360 degrees around the miniature, so a little bit difficult when you're dealing with a large dude. And then I have the scissor cam mounted right here. You can see all those paints in the background, so it's a little bit harder to deal with something large like this. But anyway, thanks so much for hanging out today. Make sure that you enter right up here the 220, oh yeah, look at that paint on my fingernail, there we go. The $225 credit giveaway. The info is pinned to the top of the mini painting studio page. Also, if you book a commission today, your deposit, you'll be able to get 10% off total of 100 or more, 20% off 400 or more, or $300 at least off of 1,000, depending on what you're getting done. So make sure you hit that get a quote button. You can also see pricing information and stuff like that at minipainting.studio/pricing. You can also check out all the brand new stuff on the Patreon, patreon.com/minipaintingstudio. And beyond all of that, thanks so much again for hanging out today. I will see you guys tomorrow again at 2 p.m. CST. Not going to be working on this big dinosaur. He is such a nightmare, but we'll figure out something else cool to do. So thanks again for all the love. Thanks for hanging out, and I hope to see you again tomorrow.